Despite booming local business, internet giants Facebook and Google, they appear to be transferring much of their revenue overseas, some calling it a bit of a tax dodge locally. Now, Nine Network finance editor Ross Greenwood joins me now. Ross, Facebook, it had sales of nearly $600 million in Australia last year, but paid only $12 million in taxes.
A little less, in fact, yeah. So it's one of those things where you sit there and you say to yourself, if you were sitting in a pub right now, would this really pass the pub test? Because if you're a tech giant, really your profit margin is enormous. So if you're making $600 million in revenue, much of that is in tax. You've got your staff and you've got your office costs, you've got some of your IT, intellectual property costs, but most of it is pure profit. So why is it that you can make $600 million in revenue in Australia from Facebook and yet only pay $12 million in tax? And the reason is it appears that they've shot $455 million offshore to a subsidiary. Now, trying to figure out how they've done this, because the tax office continues to watch and crack down on these tech giants like Facebook and Google, because Google's done a similar thing, it would seem, and that is they're hoovering up all the advertising in Australia. But then what it seems is that they then buy the advertising off themselves from a foreign country, from one of their own subsidiaries. So even though it's their own company, even though it's their own business, it's a bit like, I don't know, let's say, for example, you make pizzas, but you decide that you're actually going to buy all the ingredients from some offshore company and actually, you know, sort of inflate the price and push it all out there so you don't pay tax on any of your pizzas in Australia. It just wouldn't make any sense. But it's exactly what these tech giants are getting away with right now. The tax office, the government, they've been investigating it for some time. They have cracked down on them, but still they get away with doing this. And it's time, high time, that these companies themselves answer the questions as to why they pay so little tax here in Australia.
So, is it dodgy?
Look, to me, it clearly is a situation where they're trying to get away with paying high taxes in Australia. So dodgy, well, they're probably complying with the letter of the law. And yesterday, when Facebook was questioned about this, came out with something about, oh, there's been a change in the Australian Accounting Standards Review Board. So I went to the Australian Accounting Standards Review Board and said, what's changed? And they said, oh, well, there's some small things, but it's not really at the edge. What it's all about is about trying to shovel as much money offshore as you possibly can so you don't pay the high taxes here in Australia. So I this morning have got a small challenge out here. So let's just bring up a couple of small graphics here, shall we? So here's the first of those graphics for you. And this is Melanie Silver. Melanie Silver is the boss of Google in Australia. You're a big, responsible executive. You seem to be one of the very best in this country. I want Melanie Silver to come right here and stand and explain why you pay enough tax, enough corporate tax in Australia, and why this is seen to be a good thing. I've got somebody else as well. Will Easton is the boss of Facebook. This bloke here, he should stand right here and explain to people in Australia why his company pays enough tax and why they are not dodging tax in Australia. Now, the thing is, they're supposed to be corporate social responsibility, big organisations. Now, they should stand here and justify it to the people of Australia as to why they are doing the right thing and why they're not dodging tax.
So the gauntlet has been thrown down, Ross.
I bet they don't do it. And you know why? The reason is because they can't justify it. And this is something that Australians should be heartily sick of, because the fact is that big corporate giants should not be able to rip the money off. We pay our taxes ourselves here in Australia. Their workers pay their taxes here in Australia. But the fact of the matter is, if companies can easily get their money offshore, why should we do the right thing in Australia, paying our taxes, paying for the schools, paying for the hospitals and using their products at the same time?
I think everyone at home would be saying, hear, hear, Ross.
There you go.
Thank you.